In the fall of 1845, the black-green leaves of potato plants dotted the Irish countryside. For over 200 years, the South American vegetables had thrived in Ireland's rough terrain and unpredictable weather. Packed with carbohydrate, vitamins, and minerals, the potato was a remarkably nutrient-rich crop that made it easy for less wealthy families to maintain a balanced diet. By the mid-19th century, potatoes had supplemented other staple food, and since British mandates ensured Ireland more valuable agricultural products were exported, roughly half the country's 8.5 million residents lived almost entirely on potatoes. But when harvest began in 1845, farmers found the potatoes blackened and shriveled. Those who ate them suffered severe stomach cramps and even death. Today, we know the culprit was Phytophthora infestant, a fungus that flourished in the season unusually done better. But at the time, it was simply called the blight. The fungus likely originated in Americas, traveling across the Atlantic on ships, and while it destroyed the potato harvest across Europe, wealthier countries than us today generally fared better. They had more resources to draw on. Meanwhile, the southern and western regions of Ireland were already impoverished and entirely dependent on the single crop, making them disproportionately vulnerable. The impact of food insecurity are often most severe at the poverty line, while the failed harvest created the class crisis. The government response turned it into a national catastrophe. For centuries, Ireland had been under varying degree of English control, and by 1845, it was part of the United Kingdom, with its government based in London. During the famine's first years, this distant ruling body imported corn from North America and offered the Irish employment on public work projects, but this only caused more problems. Imported food was poorly distributed and offered insufficient nutrition, making the previously healthy population more vulnerable to disease and increasing maternal and child mortality. Worse still, the British continued to export Ireland's grain in their livestock. Meanwhile, the public works project required length shift. Meanwhile, the public works project required lengthy shifts of growing manual labor and were far from the far from where the most workers lived. For example, just one of the country's tragic incidents is the story of Thomas Malone, who walked 18 kilometers round trip to work every day. One night, exhausted and starving, he collapsed and died just before reaching home, leaving behind his wife and 6 children. Despite the year's counter tragedy, many families managed to scrape by, but in 1846, the down weather returned and the blight worsened, impacting 75% of Ireland's potato yield. British relief efforts diminished substantially in the famine's second year, while international aid helped save lives, the overall need was enormous. As the crisis went on, the government limited who was eligible for relief and taxed Ireland with funding the relief efforts themselves by increasing local taxes. Most modern historians view these disastrous policies as stemming from the mix of toxic religious ideology, laissez-faire economic policies, and political infighting. British news sources constantly depicted Irish as lazy, simple-minded alcoholics, and some London decision-makers believed the famine was God's punishment for these shifted behaviors. Other government officials purposely blocked efforts to provide meaningful relief due to internal political rivalries. As with famines and food insecurity today, Other government officials purposely blocked efforts to provide meaningful relief due to internal political rivalries. As with famines and food insecurity today, it wasn't a lack of resources that prevented the British from aiding Ireland, but rather a lack of political will. 7 years after the blight began, Ireland's weather patterns returned to normal, and the potato crop finally stabilized, but over 1 million people had perished from starvation, malnutrition, and disease. Between 1 and 2 million more flooded countries, beginning a trend that dropped Ireland's population to half its pre-famine levels by the 1920s. Today, climate change is making extreme weather more common and sustained, leading countless agricultural communities that face similar struggles. Just as in Ireland, farmers living on the margins are increasingly facing starvation, malnutrition, and disease due to global weather patterns for which they bear little responsibilities. But history doesn't have to repeat itself. If governments and institutions can provide the kind of aid these regions need, with efforts that are coordinated and ongoing, providing sufficient nutrition to prevent disease, and are offered with compassion rather than judgment.